be planning on doing it, Amy, but could you make that full screen?
But not.
If you go to start slideshow, I think it should do it.
So that's what I'm showing on my end. It's weird.
There you go.
You mean to this?
That's, there you go.
There you go. That work?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody to our second TAC meeting. We're glad you guys could all join us. Just a reminder, I'm Amy Schlappy. I am the new executive director. Patty has officially retired, which is great. She's out having a lot of fun doing a bike ride in Canada. What we would like to just go ahead and start off with is we'll just do a quick introduction. We'll start with our team here. Sarah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sarah Crook. I am the travel trainer for Hood River and Wasco counties. I work with Kat and in partnership with McKed, the Dows.
Chris?
Hello, I'm Chris Watchie. I joined the TMP team to lead up the public engagement strategy. And I'm based in Eugene, Oregon, except for today.
And then I'll go ahead and call on people. Genevieve?
Morning, everybody. My name is Genevieve Scholl. I'm the interim executive director of the Port of Hood River.
Joel?
Morning, I'm Joel Matson, the executive director of Mid-Columbia Housing Authority and Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation. Affordable housing work in Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties in Oregon, as well as Klickitat and Skamania counties in Washington.
Great.
Gordon?
Gordon Zimmerman, City Administrator, Cascade Locks, where the Bridge of the Gods spans the heart of the gorge, where mountain, wind, and water creates the best sailing in the Northwest, and where CL on the license plate stands for Cascade Locks, the second largest city in Hood River County.
Awesome. Jeremy?
I'm Jeremy Evans, Director of Fleet Operations at Mount Hood Meadows. Oversee all the vehicle operations and busing and transit and whatnot.
Thank you for joining. Andrew?
Good morning, Andrew Parrish with MIG. We're helping out on some land use analysis in support of the Transit Master Plan.
Valerie?
Hi there, I'm Valerie Egan, Regional Transit Coordinator with ODOT for Region 1. So that's Hood River, Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas County.
Thank you for joining. And Ty?
Tyrell Graves, the Operations Manager for Columbia Area Transit.
All right, so we're gonna just go ahead and dive right on in. Oh, and we have one more joining us. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, sorry, I'm late. Wait, sorry. I have to see, I'm trying to see my monitor. I am Kathy Fitzpatrick, the Mobility Manager for these for this bi-state region.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Ms. Chris.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. For the next 80 minutes or so, we're going to do a brief overview of the TMP process and give you an update on the outreach that we've done and some of the results from the outreach, which actually builds upon what you will see in the service options that Ty is going to present. And then talk a little bit about what that next phase is. For the review of the TMP progress, it's really just, as I said, looking at the some of the survey representation from respondents for this process, and then give you an idea of what's coming up. And then Andrew from MIG is going to talk about the land use transit coordination opportunities. So it's a real opportunity to weigh in on that. We're also going to ask you some targeted questions at the end about ways to reach folks in this next Hood River County representation in this next phase, as well as keeping involved in the process. And then we'll wrap up with next steps. Next. So just a quick overview of what the purpose of the Transit Master Plan was, building off the 2017 Transit Master Plan, of which many of the goals and direction for CAT has been accomplished, but also building upon that and maintaining a safe, efficient, and community-oriented transit system, really engaging and empowering and strengthening the voice of diverse groups of riders. And we'll talk a little bit about how we've gone about to do that at this point. And then, as I mentioned, Meg is going to talk about how integration of land use, fostering economic development and local partnerships is being proposed. And then strategies to address the gaps and opportunities through regional coordination. So beyond CAT system and connecting to the larger systems and geographic areas. Next one, please. So the overarching approach is to put passengers first, reach out and listen to the community, identify where those partnership opportunities are. There's a lot of integration and regional work, as you well know, happening in the gorge. So supporting that, looking at those short-term improvements, about how those short-term improvements really move CAT forward to the vision of the long-term, and then having focused results, implementation focused results. Next one, please. So again, a reminder, the approach that we used, not only for outreach, but also you'll see this in the way the land use and the service options are identified as, of 5 key focus areas, and then the regional and general outreach. So that's beyond the these 5 areas for the I-5 corridor, and then to other gorge communities. Next one, please. Okay, so here's a high level timeline that we've been operating under. We are, if you look down the second bullet, community outreach, we are looking to do another round of community outreach that will be really based on the service options and getting feedback on those. And that's planned to start around August, get that feedback back before the next TAC meeting. And that's really to help make informed decisions, to understand where the public's perspective is on some of these service option choices or where to weigh in. So the community survey, again, is going to happen. We're targeting around mid-August for that to be unveiled. So you'll be hearing from us in that vein. What we've done in the past is also have hard copy surveys for computer households, non-computer households. All right, the next slide, please. So overview of the engagement process. We started with some targeted stakeholder interviews to see if the approach that we were using would reach intended audiences and to learn about additional opportunities for outreach. The countywide regional survey is completed. There's been a number of presentations. Such a pleasure to work with Sarah Crook because she's going to talk in just a moment about the outreach that she's done and how she's targeted a variety of events to grab diverse voices and get them involved in the survey. So Sarah's done just an incredible job with that. A lot of targeted in-person outreach. And then of course the Community Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. So next one, please. So I'm going to ask Sarah just to talk a little bit about the targeted in-person outreach and some of the events and partnerships that she's been able to do. Did want to just say the displays, all materials have been bilingual to really reflect the 30% demographic of Spanish-speaking community members. Sarah?
Hi. So as you see, there's just the photos of our large displays that I put up around the community. You can see the one in the main branch library that was up for about 3 or 4 weeks in early spring or excuse me, late winter. There's a photo display at the Mercado Guadalajara up in the Heights and Pine Street Bakery. Those were just standstill displays and with information nearby about routes and information about the survey and our bookmarks to take those surveys. Now, I also went around town and visited businesses, specifically leaving bookmarks with managers to give to their employees in employee break rooms. I had promises that they were going to put them by time clocks and have employees grab bookmarks to take the survey so we get some downtown perspective from employees. I worked closely with One Community Health and did about 4 or 5 tablings at the food fish banks in Cascade Locks and in Hood River. And then also tagged along on a few outreach with their mobile medical unit. So I also made connections with the next door, and I met a wonderful woman named Celeste who accompanied me actually a couple of times to the Mercado, and then she did several tablings by herself where we engaged customers on both Friday night and Sunday afternoons when it was a strong shopping turnout, and it was well received. Let's see, we engaged commuters on the CGE bus on the way to Portland. I talked to the drivers on, when generally the regulars take the bus, and we got a good response there. I also hit some school open house in May at the end of the season. The Y East Middle School, the West Side Elementary and Cascade Locks Elementary had open houses that I was able to talk to folks. We had, there's not a photo here, but there was a sandwich board that I put the large cat poster on, and it was on 4th and Columbia there by Double Mountain for, I don't know, about 2.5 months, I think. So yeah, that's a quick wrap up of the outreach I did.
That's great.
We also did a tabling at Dog River Coffee.
Oh yes, Dog River Coffee. Yes, Patty and Chris actually spent the morning at Dog River a couple months ago. That was I think that was fun, wasn't that, Chris?
Yeah, a little too much caffeine, but yes. I was doing laps around Dog River, but that was great. We captured not only residents, but also folks visiting and very interested about using cat as they were visiting Hood River. I did want to just highlight one more thing. The CAC was instrumental in getting the information out through their networks and their channels. So early pitch to you all is when we come up with this next survey, we will send you bilingual social media messages as well as articles. If you could put that into your communication channels, that would be fantastic. All right, so let's go to the next one. So the purpose of the community survey was really to gain rider and community experience with transit, understand the real and perceived gaps, needs, and future mobility options to explore. And we've gone through the methods. We're not going to go into a lot of the survey findings. We will send the survey findings to the committee if interested. But I wanted to, first of all, just highlight the representation. So the next one, please. So this is actually pretty reflective of the ridership of CAT. So Hood River East, Hood River West, Odell, Upper Valley, Parkdale and Upper Valley, and Cascade Locks in terms of folks who lived within Hood River County. And if you go to the next question, we asked, if you don't live in Hood River County, where do you live? And in this case, we have the majority really from Portland, followed by the Dalles and Bingen, White Salmon being fairly equally represented, Moiser, and then a slice of Troutdale. The other is a variety of other smaller communities between here and Portland. And then the next. So in terms of age group, it was fairly well represented between the majority of 25 to 64. Really, and then we had representation from over 65. Was very happy to see under 18 and the 18 to 24. And I just want to do a call out to our CAC youth member who did a fantastic job working with the high school and getting feedback. So very, very thankful for that and appreciative. All right, can we go to the next one? And so this is just in terms of demographics, whom we heard from. There were folks who preferred not to say here, but one thing I wanted to point out, I mentioned earlier that 30% of Spanish speaking communities, here we have about 20% represented. So we're feeling okay about that. And then this next round, we want to try to get up to that 30% so that it is reflective of the demographics of Hood River County. All right, could we, just a transition here. As we go through, Ty's going to lead you through the route options, service options, and coupled with that are transit supportive transportation options. We're going to kind of refine that language. It's a little clunky right there, but basically this is what are those types of transportation options and amenities that support transit. So the three that we're going to really hone in are the stops and amenities, land use, which Andrew will touch on after we review the service options, and then the first last mile options. And we refer to some of those as mobility hubs. So it's a little bit more than just first and last mile options. These are hubs that have a multitude of travel options and connections. So we'll get into that and you will see those reflected on the map. So I'm going to pause here just for a second to see if there are any questions. Kind of zip through that fairly quickly. Okay, well, let's move on to Ty. Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. Amy, you're going to review some of this. I'm sorry. Let's start with the, thank you.
The first is just the different types of stops and amenities. So there's the standard stop, which is has a distance of about a quarter mile to half a mile between stops. And it has just a regular pole sign and a little seat as well as a QR code for stop times. And it will also eventually have a digital sign that will allow people to have real-time information. There's a sheltered stop, which will have to have a minimum of 10 boarding rides per day or a minimum of 5 boarding rides per day if the stop is located next to a medical or senior facility, or if a business or organization is willing to sponsor the stop. So we, right now, a couple examples of that is we have one at One Community Health. And since we put actually a shelter at that stop, our ridership has increased quite a bit. And it's become one of our highest utilized stops that we have. Another really good example is the one at Thunder Island, which is in Cascade Locks. That's the one where Thunder Island was really interested in being a big partner, and they've done a lot of different things to help incorporate us into their organization and to support transit. So in the shelter is, it has a sheltered area, a bench, a real-time tablet, pole and sign, and eventually we're working on finding a grant in order to add lighting to it. And they do have garbage cans. Some other amenities have sidewalk access, curb cuts, ADA pad, bike racks, etc. And those we do provide maintenance for. We are working on, this is something we're working with the city too, of really making sure that all of our sheltered stops are mobility accessible, ADA accessible, and don't have weird curb cuts or etc. And then there's the transit center or mobility hub. It's minimum of 2 routes and 15 boarding rides per day, or linkage with 2 or more first last mile options. Includes a shelter, bench, real-time tablet, pole, lighting, garbage, bus layover parking, and bike parking. And then again, there's sidewalk and bicycle lane access. Basically, a lot more access for this hub. Right now, we do have what we consider a transit center hub. With these service alternatives, we are looking at doing more of a mobility hub as well. So it's not necessarily look quite like our current transit suburb hubs, but that the goal is to make sure there's a lot of different mobility options that people can use, whether it's car share, park and ride, bike share, transit, etc., etc. And we are looking at potentially putting the mobility hub in more remote areas, potentially in Odell or Parkdale or Cascade Locks, depending on what the community is looking for or what their preference is. Okay. Oops. So again, this is just kind of going, describing what a mobility hub is or how we're defining it, and first last mile. So again, having several different transit route connections, potentially micro transit, bike share, van pool, car share, etc. Any questions on those?
I'm just not familiar with what microtransit is.
Yeah, so microtransit can actually mean several different things. There's been a lot of different companies out there that state that they're microtransit, but basically it's the potential for having like a van, and there would be demand technology, so people could say, hey, it's kind of like a bigger Lyft or Uber type of.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now it's my turn.
All right, Ty.
So this is our current city route. We realized yesterday when we did this presentation that we probably should put the current city route on all of our other route maps. So we're probably going to be doing a lot of jumping back and forth as you guys have questions here. Does anybody have questions on our current route before we jump into the alternatives?
And just a reminder, this is a circulator route. From our community, we have heard that, so it goes one way. So it goes, from CAT to Aquatic Center to the Heights to downtown Port, etc., and just constantly loops. We have heard some frustration from people who are going from the Heights and they want to go to the west side, but they have to do the entire loop. We have heard from people that they just want to go to the west side from the Aquatic Center, and then again, they have to do the whole loop. So we're taking all this feedback in and seeing ways that we can make it easier for people to go in between kind of those different activity centers who want to necessarily go the other way that the city route goes. Any
Amy,
questions? Yeah.
So just a quick question. Operationally, is this a challenge for CAT drivers?
I mean, the city of Hood River is a challenge for CAT drivers. This is probably our least challenging thing that we've come up with.
And the reason being with the different streets.
Yeah,
and
there's just so many unique intersections here in Hood River, and a lot of places where it's impossible to make a left turn in under 10 minutes.
Right.
So this is our current best solution. It runs on a 45-minute loop counterclockwise.
Any questions on this specific route?
Well, just, in terms of doing a clockwise version of the same one, is there pretty significant funding and other barriers to providing that?
So the main barriers for that are traffic patterns, especially downtown. We'd have to try and make a left onto Second or Oak. There would be
No
multiple
lefts in Hood River.
Yes. In order to do this the other way, there would have to be a left turn at a major intersection downtown.
Yeah. Okay.
We have come up with a couple of different potential solutions because we can't necessarily do just a clockwise version that would hopefully help.
Before we go into those, can I
Yeah.
read the survey response real quick?
Yeah.
So the main things that we got back from the survey was that riders wanted extended service hours. So overwhelming priority was evenings, 6 to 10 p.m. and more service on the weekends. More identifiable bus stops, so priority for visible and formalized on-street bus stops. And then frequency of service, priority, especially in the AM and PM commuter times. Everybody else doesn't have this bar at the top, right? So they can actually see. Can everybody else see that this says Hood River East? I don't even know what it actually says.
Focus
Yes,
area
it's the Hood
Focus
River
area
East
1.
option. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna pull the actual map.
And I do want to give a shout out to
You don't have this one.
Jake at the county for doing these awesome maps.
We don't have that one.
Okay.
It's okay. So it's gonna be a little bit confusing here in that this is Hood River East option 1. Hood River West option 1 is also part of the same option. So we've split this into 2 routes in the morning in order to increase service. Go ahead.
As we've started reviewing this with people, we reviewed it with our board last night. We realized that we really need to add these 2 options to the same map to make it easier to read. So we apologize for that, but we'll kind of flip back and forth as we need to.
Yeah. So optimally, we would have these 2 routes on the same map and then probably have our current city route on the same map also, and maybe a different color so that there can be some comparisons. So the idea with this is that this would be an additional vehicle that runs during the peak hours to assist with those areas where you are having to ride the full 45-minute loop to get basically the other direction. So this would go directly between the port and Rosars up and down the hill, and that would largely solve the problem of people coming in from the Columbia Gorge Express or people coming in from the Dalles and they get dropped off at the port. And then instead of being able to directly go up to Rosars to transfer to the Upper Valley or go up to Parkdale or anywhere else, they have to ride the city lap or the city route all the way around, and it can take over half an hour to get all the way up there. So this section 1 would be a morning and evening commuter route that would supplement the city route in order to alleviate those transfer issues and long ride times.
And then some things that we would need to have to consider with this would be that we'd be adding an express route, which could be confusing to riders, and it's it is duplicating adding service where we already have it.
Yeah, and we're not necessarily adding any additional service areas.
Yeah. All right, and so then here is that the other side to that.
I'm sorry if the arrows can be a little bit confusing. There would also probably be some stops added out in this west side area on Belmont or Fairview out there that we have not added onto this map.
And we would love to hear suggestions, and we will also be asking the public this as well with the final survey that's sent out to the community.
But yeah, the point of this one would be the same as the other route, except for it's serving the west side. So it would increase service for people trying to get downtown in the morning to go to work. And hopefully they wouldn't have to ride a route all the way around, and they have a more direct route directly to downtown and back. This one does add a little bit of service area. There is the same concern that with the changing schedule during the morning and the afternoon, it's going to be confusing for riders. Questions on this option one?
The east side version. Here's the west side version again.
Now we can also go back to the original city route to look at that. Okay, if there's no questions, we can go on to option 2.
Actually, just a quick summary, if that would be just for clarity. So it's taking the original route, it's breaking it into 2 routes to better serve riders so their travel time. And it's adding additional service to the existing Hood River East route during peak hours.
So it is,
Is that it?
it's keeping our additional city route, and then during peak hours in the morning and the evening, we would run these 2 additional routes to help alleviate the long transfer times that people are complaining about when they're having to do this full loop instead of being able to run basically the reverse loop.
Great, thank you.
So the concern is that people are going to see the schedule and be like, oh, I can do this more than just these 1 times that we have outlined. And then there would be additional confusion on which exactly, is this the city bus? Is this my west side bus? Is this the east side bus? So there's some parts we'd have to work out there.
And I think that's going to be a concern really as we
Yeah.
grow in general. We might potentially have to look at changing how we call our routes. So that is probably something as we grow we're going to have to address anyways. But yeah, that is a concern.
Great,
So,
thank you.
so does that mean in the morning there would be actually 3 buses? So the one doing the regular loop, one doing the out and back, and the other doing a different out and back?
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's oof. That sounds confusing. It sounds, I do see where the advantage of those out and backs. I mean, that's definitely important. But I think, yeah, it's, if you can figure out how to make it not confusing, then that would be awesome. But that sounds like a big challenge.
Yeah, I would refer to you and Sarah on that.
And lots of travel training, educational opportunities, marketing that would really be needed. And in addition, because we're adding quite a bit more service, we will have to look at new funding streams for this as well.
Any other questions on option 1, or we can proceed to option 2? Option 2.
I just wanted to add, there's never a time when you have educated everyone, right? People come and go, and especially in this area, with tourism and visitors. I mean, people are here once. We've got migrant seasonal workers who, some of whom the seasonal workers have lived here for generations, migrant workers who may come for a season and never come back. So just from a travel training perspective, you're never going to be done. So I would really advocate for a route that is simple to understand, like over a little bit more efficiency. Because that rider understanding of how the route works is, I think, more important ultimately.
Understand that?
So I'm just going to do a time check because we have to, we need to get through initial feedback. So this is very helpful. Thank you, Kathy. If we're moving too fast and you have a comment, could you put it in the chat? Because that'll help us too, because we do want to save enough time for land use and to talk about the transit supportive. So this is the second option being proposed, correct?
Yeah, this is second option being proposed. This would actually replace the current city route with a new route. It increases the service area a little bit. It is reduced the service to the west side. This does provide us some options to pair with some other routes a little bit more. I'm gonna go through it quickly since you're telling me we're late on time. Number two, part two of number two. Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I don't know. I think everyone else has seen it normally. I think it's just our projector being weird. So this is part two of number two. So this would, again, be replacing the normal city route. It is expanded a little bit more than the option one. So it goes farther over onto Frankton and Belmont. We would do some additional stops over in that area. It would probably be a less frequent service because we're serving a larger area, but we would hope to get a larger rider base again because we're serving a larger area. Any questions on that one? That's plug.
I think it's her plug.
Okay. Really bothering me.
I know.
Yeah.
I like the purple, but
Sorry, it's showing up purple on our screen, so it's kind of distracting us.
Ty, could we go back to the Hood River West option number two? To Kathy's point, would this reduce confusion, do you think?
Kathy, what do you
Reduce
think?
duplication?
I think it would reduce confusion between it would be the same service all day long. So yes, I would think that would reduce confusion.
And it's two routes.
Yeah,
So we would come up with different names and there would be quite a bit of education to change people from that circulator frame
Yeah.
of mind. But I think probably overall would be less because it also is up and back too. So it's going to be the same route for people if they're trying to go back basically the same way. But Kathy, what do you think? I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would have to, I'd have to really think about that and then how, and how the other services tie in as well. I'm just thinking of the MATS bus and then the bus coming from the Dalles. I just have to think about that. How would that help, let's say, CGCC students coming into Hood River trying to get to the college? I mean, there's just so many, I'd have to look at this actually for.
so that's doubly going to benefit them in that if they get dropped off at the port, they now have a more direct route up to Rosars in the college area. If they're coming in from Cascade Locks or on the Columbia Gorge Express, they now also have a more direct route going up to Rosars in the college area. Or I guess the one from Cat is probably equally as direct.
Yeah. And it also has the potential of pulling some of the deviations off of the upper valley because they would then have access to the west side, et cetera, on this.
Yeah.
And it would pull off some of the, again, it would transfer some people from Dial-A-Ride because we have a fair amount of Dial-A-Ride in this area, and we could be able to transfer them to or work with them to try the fixed routes if that meets their need.
Hopefully.
And of course, then with this too, because we are in a completely different area, we would be looking at new stops and where to put them and making sure they're safe spots for the bus to stop.
But does this leave the whole center area, no buses whatsoever? Or is there gonna be a?
So it's combined. So you have the west side and then you have the east side.
Oh, okay. I see.
So again, they're
This is what we
combined.
explained at the beginning, that we need all the maps on one map.
So it's a
Yeah.
little easier to read.
I think we can move on.
Okay.
Okay. Parkdale and Upper Valley, focus area option 1. So currently, I realized last night, we have the current city route on here, but then we don't have the current Upper Valley or Cascade Locks or anything else routes. So we just kind of jump into the. So yeah, for our current Upper Valley route, we run a deviated fixed route right now. So we stop at Mid Valley Market and McIsaac's, and then people can call in to make any deviations if they cannot make it to those 2 fixed route stops. So this option 1 is to largely increase that fixed route service to the Parkdale and Upper Valley area. Right now, we only go up there twice a day, unfortunately. This would integrate with our Gorge to Mountain service, so that our Gorge to Mountain service would drive up to the mountain in the morning, and then on the way back down, it would stop in Parkdale and hopefully bring people from the community into Hood River that are trying to get in for work or whatnot. This would obviously reduce the amount of deviations because we'd be doing it in a large vehicle instead of one of our smaller ones. And then this would not allow us to have direct service between, excuse me, Parkdale and Odell, as the larger vehicles can't actually get into the Odell area. Option 2.
Could I just ask a quick question on this one?
Yes.
For the baseline to Highway 35 connection there, I'm wondering if the bus, did anybody talk about going south, going south instead of on baseline, but continuing on Cooper Spur to Culbertson, Hudson, and then cutting over? Is there more residences on that way than on baseline? Maybe not.
There definitely is. It's pretty sparse out there. We could do some definitely surveying and dig into it. My personal feeling would be that bus is going to take a long time to go out there, and we're probably not going to get very much ridership through there. And it's also not the best road for a large vehicle. But that is definitely an option we can look at.
Yeah, and also Clear Creek. I'm just thinking of, there's especially on that first section just south of McIsaac's, there are just a lot of residences, and many of those lower income or agricultural worker houses that maybe would make more use of the service than those folks that live on that stretch of baseline.
With this larger vehicle, we're just only going to be able to stop at McIsaac's. There's not going to be stops.
Oh, there's no other stops. I see.
Without a huge influx of funding and somebody to put in some big pullouts or anything. Unfortunately, since we're not a school district, we're not allowed to stop in the road.
Okay.
Our vehicle has to get off the road, and it makes it
Yeah,
very
there's no shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay.
A winter plowing just in general.
Yeah.
Anywhere to
Well,
try and stop.
baseline's pretty much gonna be plowed, but those other
Yeah.
side streets probably won't be.
Oh, but even for like right now during the summer, there's no way for us to pull a 40-foot vehicle off the road to stop. So we can't have an official bus stop anywhere along Baseline Drive.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I would love it if we could.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Option 2. So option 2 is essentially removing all fixed route service from the Parkdale area, and we could use our funding to contract a taxi service or someone else to provide those trips and get everyone to the transit hub or down to Odell, where they can actually get to our services. you want to take over for a second? Let me see what you-
Sure, yeah. Yeah, any questions on that one? Okay. All right, so this is for Odell and Lower Upper Valley. So this, again, this would be, instead of having our deviated fixed route, we would be doing just fixed route and adding a couple of additional bus stops. These are a couple of suggestions. And then we would be working with a local company to do more of the dial-a-ride or custom pickup and drop-offs. And we would be extending the hours to 8 p.m. So this would allow more people in the Upper Valley to commute into downtown for work. This would also make it a lot quicker. Right now, our deviated fixed route, because it's so popular, which is wonderful, but it creates, we have a lot of delays, and it makes it less optimal for folks who want to quick in or out of Hood River in order to get to work or what have you. Any questions?
Amy, I just have a quick question. This optional new bus stop on 35, is that should that be a hub, or is the hub earlier, further up the road?
So we have another option, or other option is where it's yeah, I think one of those should be probably a hub.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to recognize, looking at, it's a lot of information to absorb. So it won't be the only time that you see these, there'll be some refinements, but for today's meeting, if anything jumps out, issues such as what Kathy brought up, that would be very helpful, I think, for staff to hear.
And we can also send these out too. So if you want time to just kind of peruse them and think them through, I can completely understand that. And then send your feedback to myself. That would also be greatly appreciated.
Great.
Do you have kind of a heat map of where the deviated route had actually deviated to?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes, we do. A large amount, I can tell you that a large amount of our deviations in this area, they're actually really close to the Mid-Valley Market stop. And we have them several over kind of the Mill Creek Mill Road area, and then also kind of by the East Middle School.
And is the Neal Creek Mill, is that what we call the lower mill, the old Lower Handle Mill?
I honestly do not know. Ty, do you know that?
Not sure
Sorry.
about that.
You said the Lower Hand Mills?
Lower Handle Mill. Is that where Cardinal Glass and the Cascade Pet Camp are?
That's my understanding that
Okay.
that Neal Creek Forest Products or whatever is kind of behind that port property at the bottom of the hill past Odell there, off on that little loop there. It goes from Cardinal Glass off the
Yeah.
highway back into there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cardinal
That's my
Glass would basically be underneath the B of the optional new bus stop, I think.
Right, that's a pretty wide intersection there. I think you would have room there. So the port owns a lot of that property that I think is labeled Neal Creek Mill. And would be happy to talk in the future about a bus stop on that property as well, if you need one.
Well, that is wonderful to hear. Thank you. We'll make a note of that.
Where's the Mid-Valley Market on this map? I'm trying to find it. And it's not on there, but where's its first? Oh.
So we have about 8 more minutes to go through the rest of the service options.
All right, thank you, Chris. We'll go ahead and go to the second Odell, and how do you wanna?
This one is very similar to the first one, just a little bit of a reduced fixed route stops, so it'd have more options for deviations.
Any questions?
Cascade Locks. So this is pretty much what we do currently in Cascade Locks. It is a fixed route that allows for some deviations. Basically drives up and down Forest Lane and Wanapa, hitting the main street in Cascade Locks, and allows us to deviate off to people's homes if they call in a request. That is option one. Option two is to eliminate the fixed route option and go with same thing that we are proposing at Parkdale, which is have a contractor or someone else provide those door-to-door services, get everyone to the transit hub, and our fixed route services going to Portland, the Dalles, and Hood River would provide that not last mile, but the rest of the trip.
Any questions about that? And this would, the Columbia Gorge Express would still obviously go through here, just to be clear, even though it's not on the map.
So back on option one, you talked about on Herman Creek Lane, there is the integrative health. Is there going to be a stop that way, or is that a deviated route?
There's going to be what, sorry?
Grain Integrative Health is there on Herman Creek Lane, about where the A is on Herman. And that might be instead of going out through the, well, either way, it probably needs to be added.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely something that we could look into, having to
Okay.
stop. And just to clarify, this would be a fixed route.
Okay,
So we would add a couple of stops depending on where the community input.
Fixed route allowing for deviations,
Okay, so it would be deviated fixed.
fewer opportunities.
okay, thanks.
Because we would still want this to do the, like, those pickups, to not send a full vehicle down to do that.
Okay, but it would just be, just to clarify though, where those deviations would be, there would be a restricted
Mhm.
space.
Yeah.
Okay, compared to with what we do now, we have a larger space that we are willing to do deviations.
Is that 3/4 of a mile, Amy?
Pretty much anywhere in Cascade Locks, where would you? not
Okay.
do Cascade Locks?
Okay.
We'll talk
Sorry.
about later. Yeah, sorry, that's a sidebar conversation.
Just a quick, I have a quick question also. There is a bus shelter on the corner of Riverview and Clark. I don't see marked there. I'm guessing that's because it's for the school and not CAT.
It's just, it was there a long time ago, and it's just, they used to put bus shelters all over town.
Okay.
It's nobody's really. Lions Club is supposed to be taking care of them, but they're not.
Yeah, there's quite a few shelters in Cascade Locks that we would love to use. A lot of them we cannot use because of the size of our vehicles and the
You
way
can't
that
get
they're
off the road.
placed with the road. We just can't get off the road to actually serve the shelter.
Yeah, so there, that one in particular is right kitty corner from low income housing apartment complex. Might be worth making sure you can't use it.
Well, the school routes uses those.
Yeah.
Yeah, the school is allowed to stop in the street. We're not allowed to stop in the street, which makes it a huge pain for us.
Okay.
There's some additional
who's-
stuff you can-
Whose rule is that? I mean, in most other places, an in-lane stop is quite common.
ODOT has to approve it.
Okay, so if it's an ODOT facility,
Well, so it's an ODOT street, so ODOT needs to approve the stop. It's also within the Cascade Locks city limits, so Cascade Locks will also have to approve it.
So Forest Lane is not ODOT.
Just out of curiosity, is that a very detailed process? Whether it's ODOT or the city of Hood River? Cascade, excuse me.
I've not tried to put a formal stop in Cascade Locks in Hood River. It has been an amazingly onerous process.
Oh, we're so much better. No problem.
Cascade Locks is so much easier.
And so what I'm hearing is that there's just the belief that if this is the route that is chosen, we would just need to do a lot more additional work to kind of figure out, pinpoint those specific areas where there would be the need for a fixed route or fixed route stop, and then identifying what we would need to do in order to make that happen.
The city would be very encouraged if you took over the bus stops and maintained them in order to pick up your people on the fixed routes. We're not going to have a problem with that.
Okay.
I think
Thank you.
if I could jump in just real quick too, I think Genevieve mentioned this. So off of Bell there, where currently the fixed route turns and goes off Forest, but to the south is Bell Avenue. That's a senior housing, affordable housing development that we have. But then also, as many of you probably know, there's electric vehicle charging station, just west of there. So if there's an opportunity, just want to raise my hand as well, supporting another fixed stop in that part of town. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. I'm writing that down.
I'd also like to flag a further conversation about in-lane bus stops. Those are generally preferred over pulling over, because then the bus, of course, has to pull back into traffic, which is always problematic. So I'd just be interested. I know that was something that had been previously advocated for in the Heights, was those in-lane bus stops. And so I'm just wondering why it seems like there's a change in emphasis here, what Kat would prefer for a bus stop. And I just really want to know why, because
No, we prefer in lane 100%.
okay.
You're
Well,
saying is
I've been
problem
told
with-
no by every single person that I've asked. No, you cannot stop in lane, by everybody in the city, everybody on ODOT, everybody I've ever talked to is.
The
no.
problem
Okay.
with in-lane,
IMET does it.
yeah, the problem with in-lane is school buses, you have to stop for a school bus both directions. For CAT, you don't. So anybody crossing the street would be in danger, and I just think they want to avoid that.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of research and data that really supports the increased safety of an in-lane stop. And I think maybe it's a matter of education. And if it's a matter of education, then that's probably something that should be flagged, because because people are making decisions because they don't have the right information doesn't mean that those decisions continue to be made with the wrong information. So would love to flag that for working with the cities and working with the road authorities regarding in-lane bus stops.
That would be great,
Yep.
Kathy.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something we would, like to work with all our partners to figure out how we could potentially make that happen. Okay.
Great feedback.
Good. And then the second option. All
I
right.
think that's great. Perfect timing.
Wonderful. All right, Andrew, off to you.
Okay, can you still hear me okay?
And would you
Like
like
it.
me to work through the slides or would you like to share your own screen?
Yeah, if you've got them in there, the version from last night, then I can just speak to those, no problem. So again, my name is Andrew. I work for a company called MIG, and we're doing a little bit of land use analysis kind of in support of all of this work. I think that some of the items that I'm going to run through quickly are kind of supportive of some of the options that you've seen, but I guess my thinking is that our work is going to help refine and kind of choose between some of these options, and it'll have some kind of longer term policy implications. So here is basically what MIG is doing. We did a plans policy review looking at the existing conditions reports, looking at the MCAD regional transit strategy, comprehensive plans for the jurisdictions in Hood River County and for the county itself. And kind of summarizing the key points we think are important there, and some of the maybe policy gaps that we see that maybe as jurisdictions continue with their kind of long range planning efforts, we can figure out how to incorporate transit a little more explicitly in some of these. We also did a number of stakeholder interviews, several of which were with the folks on the line here today. And right now we're in the process of doing what we're calling a land use assessment. So we're taking those key spots, these potential locations for new housing, new employment, new tourism uses, and we're doing a deeper dive into, well, what does the zoning say and who's actually in charge here? And is this supported by any of these long range plans? And then later on in the fall here, we're going to be coming up with a TOD toolkit, so a list of strategies for supporting transit-oriented development and some example code and policy language that that CAT can kind of work with City of Hood River County, City of Cascade Locks, and others to try to incorporate. Those are the types of things where, you know, if you're building a new development and the transit master plan says, hey, we'd really like the transit hub here, you know, you as a developer will have to work with CAT and try to figure out how that gets put down on the ground. So that's the goal. Next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. So I think you're familiar with this. The study area of our look is the entire county. So I'm just going to talk about the focus areas here and make a brief couple of statements. I think folks on the call are pretty familiar with all this stuff. So I think our goal is to hit this at a pretty high level and then open it up for a little bit of conversation. So let's go to Cascade Locks area. Next slide. The city of Cascade Locks is the main focal point of this area, of course, and we gave this presentation to the board yesterday, and they also mentioned some spots on the historic Columbia River Highway that we'll want to mention in this work as well. But the main issues, as I'm sure you're all aware, parking is a big issue, especially on weekends. Maybe transit can help with that. There's some residential growth expected. A lot of that is going to be large lot, detached, single family, probably pretty nice homes. But there is expected to be continued employment growth in Cascade Locks in the business park area. And if we go to the next slide, there's a map that shows some of this in a little bit more detail. These are basically nicer maps than the versions that were in your packet for this meeting. You'll see grain healthcare there. That's what the gentleman was mentioning earlier. The business park area is this purple zone, the industrial zones. Further growth is expected there. One other one I think worth mentioning is the it's item 6 on here. No, number 2 on here. There's a new trailhead for the Pacific Crest Trail. It'd be something that folks might be interested in accessing by transit. Next slide. So the city of Hood River is cut into kind of an east and west on these maps as well. On the west side, I think the main points are that the west side of Hood River continues to grow, and that's probably where most of the growth is going to occur in the longer term. There's also a couple of sites, the airfield and potential for kind of recreational access to Post Canyon is something that folks are interested in. So the next slide will show those kind of a zoomed out level. And so you can see just how far away the airfield and what I believe is the lower staging area for Post Canyon, kind of off in the distance there. So maybe not too feasible for a fixed route stop, but there's still some interest in getting out there. And the next slide will zoom in to the west side a little bit more closely. So the west side area concept plan is basically the guiding document for the future kind of development and annexation of the west side of Hood River here. The Cascade area streetscape plan has some kind of ideas and it identifies some spots for future kind of infill along Cascade Avenue. I think that's going to be a big one to look at. The Rand Road development from the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority, I'm sure we're all well aware of, but that's going to be a big one that will be really important to serve, and that's going to come with an extension of Wine Country Road. So there'll be some actual opportunity to help, plan how that road goes and where a bus might be able to stop. One other thing I'll mention is the West Side Park site, number 7 on here. I did see that was on your maps as well, Ty. So it looks like that's been identified as a actual feature park. So that's kind of cool out there. Okay, yeah, let's go to the next slide. For the remainder of the city of Hood River, it's sort of broken down into activity on the waterfront, very popular location and lots of room to grow there. And then kind of as you move south, some new thinking in the Heights District. Urban renewal money is helping a streetscape plan there. And it's probably going to be a big opportunity for some redevelopment out there. So next slide. There are some additional affordable housing MCHA developments out here that we've identified on these maps. Again, good to keep in mind as we're thinking about route options. And I guess I should have said this earlier, but I would really love to get the GIS layers for those routes, and we can put those on these maps as well, just for the options and for what's existing, so you can actually look at stuff. All together. So I'll connect with you, Ty, on that. Hopefully we can get that.
If you shoot your name out, we can get you all that information.
Great. So lot 1 is on the waterfront is a great opportunity for future transit. I think that will probably serve the waterfront there. How a line gets in and around and through the waterfront is, I'll leave that to the route planners, but there are a number of kind of recreation sites, new employers, old employers getting bigger out in that area. And I suppose the other items here are just as you go along kind of into the Heights along 12th and 13th, there's a lot of really important areas that need service and will continue to grow. And the streetscape planning that's underway currently is an opportunity to maybe have those conversations about, could we do a stop in the street? Can we get a pull out? So that's where the locus of activity is, I believe. Next slide.
And just to give additional information about the port site, we are working with the port to get involved with the Lot 1 development. So that is something that we are working on.
As we look to Odell and Lower Highway 35, these other focus areas, Odell and Parkdale, they're going to be the subject of some community planning as part of the county's kind of big comprehensive plan update. So that's an opportunity to actually have some discussions about these communities, and that's when we can talk about policy language that's in the county code and other items of note. I think you probably saw on the route maps earlier, the Odell School, Fairgrounds, some other services there. A circulator for that area is a good option. It also contains some pretty significant employers, large fruit packing houses, and related businesses. And yeah, we talked about the Neal Creek area with Cardinal Glass and the former mill site that's I believe remediated by the Port of Hood River and is expected to become additional employment. We also heard some talk about a potential Pine Grove Tourism Center in this area. I think it's connected to a rail line, and some folks are interested in trying to make that kind of a rail experience. So there might be an option for some kind of service to that endpoint. And the next slide will show these on a little bit more detailed map. So yeah, you'll see Pine Grove up there in the top right. The other items listed here as item 1, those are the major sites that we think might be good to hit with a circulator service. And then 2 and 3 are major employment areas in the M zones, the industrial zones out here.
And then also at the board meeting last night, it was highlighted I guess there was and I don't have all this historical knowledge, but there was a potential proposed site at the intersection. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the term. Andrew, do you remember? It was going.
Were you talking about the D site?
Yeah, that one.
I think that will show up on the next map, I think. But yeah, I looked into that a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So again, let's just go ahead to focus area 5 here. So again, Parkdale is going to be the subject of a community planning effort. Overall, Parkdale is a really small community, and even if it grows, a lot, it'll still be a pretty small community. So that will have to factor into your service there. Transit to the community of Mount Hood and the D site are the other items that rose to the top here. So on the next slide, we'll see that in a little bit more detail. So D tour, I think, is what they called it. This has been something that the Thrive Hood River folks have been kind of against, and it's received some LUBA denials, Land Use Board of Appeals for Oregon. So it's basically, there was a exception for Oregon state planning rules that said you could build an industrial site out in D, which is where the item number 3 is in the top left of this map. And some folks said, well, if there was an exception for an industrial site, how about we do a big hotel resort concert venue kind of thing? And that there are folks who are quite against that. So I don't personally see a lot of potential in a big new kind of draw out there, at least the way things stand currently. But to the extent that transit can help with single occupancy vehicles driving to and from this area, which I think was one of the main concerns that folks had, there might be a potential there. So at least there are people talking about that, I guess, is where I'd leave it. And also on this map, yeah, the Parkdale area and the community of Mount Hood, kind of the other community centers in this area. So I believe the next slide just is our wrap-up questions. Mainly, we want to know, is there anything that we missed that you know about, and which of these locations or topics are of most interest to you? What do you want us to focus on as we kind of go further with this land use analysis, and anything else you want to tell us?
I'll just chime in real quick and make sure to introduce myself to you as the person to speak to at this point about everything Lot 1 related. I can give you an update on some funding issues that we're running into for our development ideas for that transit hub. We did not get a $2.9 million grant from the EDA that we requested. Next Monday, the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Hood River will be discussing potential effects of sunsetting the waterfront urban renewal zone on our ability to fund East Anchor Way and that hub. So we're dealing with some pretty hefty issues for that site right now, and would love to make sure that you are plugged in on all of that.
Genevieve, I have some updates for you too on our side. So if maybe there is a time where we could set up a meeting
Okay.
and I can follow up with you after after this.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome.
Andrew, did you include in your interviews? I'm really curious about park and rides. Gordon, I know that, I've heard you say in the past, like don't send people to Cascade Locks to park, please. But I'm wondering about the port and, and the cities. If there is a conversation about parking structures, park and rides, about providing places for people to park, or would you just rather people did not bring their cars, which I totally would understand.
No, there's always discussion about parking structures. The port's trying to work with Union Pacific Railroad to get that area down there just right off of Wanapa, which would provide about 200 parking spaces. But that's trying to get something out of the Union Pacific Railroad is very difficult. Otherwise, we don't have a lot of space.
Yeah, so there's no other like plan B for parking in the works.
No.
Yeah, I mean that I get it. Andrew, did you hear anything, or Genevieve, is the port talking about, you've kind of been used as the de facto parking area for for a while, for the ski bus and other other transit. So just wondering what the port is thinking about.
You mean for the Port of Hood River for the waterfront zone? I think it's a pretty simple equation. The parking demand downtown and on the waterfront just requires us to be supportive of transit. We just have way more cars than we can handle. Parking passes and parking rates on the waterfront are going to go up. And in terms of the season passes, they're going to go way up. So we will be trying to motivate folks to use the bus as much as possible. The Lot 1 issue is really complex, and we've got a lot of barriers to overcome to get to it. But no matter what eventually is built on Lot 1, East Anchor Way has to happen first. And that's a straight requirement from the IAMP. It's an ODOT, ingress egress requirement that has to be met before anything can be built there. And so, the transit hub is not going to go away. It's going to be an essential component of that road construction project. The timing of it is a challenge because we have some pretty big funding challenges to overcome.
But the nexus between park and ride, a parking, a place where people where the destination is to park, is that something the port is considering, like that integration of the park and ride the bus? Or would you rather that people arrive at the port property without their cars?
Well, beyond the Meadows Park and Ride agreement, there's no other discussion besides that.
That's Mount Hood Meadows. Yeah, okay. And from my perspective, I mean, issues of the National Scenic Area make it really hard to build anything like a park and ride in the gorge. There was a little bit of discussion about maybe some locations along the historic Columbia River Highway that were kind of focal points where people could, maybe arrive and park and bike somewhere, but there's really not much opportunity for anything like that. So I think I think I get what you're saying. Wouldn't it be nice if people could drive to Cascade Locks and take the bus around the rest of all the lovely amenities out here? That if that's the case, I think there's going to need to be some funding associated with that at some point.
Well, I'm kind of agnostic. I was just wanting to know how those cities felt about the way people arrive to them. And it does sound, I think the city of Hood River is planning for a parking structure. They've been talking about that. But what I'm hearing from Gordon and Genevieve is, there's just no room, and you can definitely do more high value development than a parking lot or a park and ride. So then the emphasis, and so I'm agnostic as to whether or not you've got those parking structures, but if you're not planning on that, then you really have to plan on making sure that people do not arrive with their car. So that changes the focus, and that's where I was trying to go with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this set of materials?
I have I'm sorry if I could chime in, just a quick question if Valerie's still on the call and available, about if there are any ODOT on the gorge, any ODOT planning for park and rides. And I understand there's some limitation in space and available land, but is that a discussion that's happening within the ODOT halls?
Yes, that is a conversation happening and kind of a process that's still happening too with the current FLAP solicitation for which we should have received funding or award decisions in October. We did request funding or apply for funding to further kind of study those types of like a park and ride kind of analysis and how that would kind of support transit service or expansion. But kind of tied into that, there are currently conversations happening with the city of Troutdale about a potential parking structure that would be developed that would be kind of behind those the Columbia Gorge Outlet Mall. That's kind of a brownfield area, so it's kind of developing it so its development uses are kind of limited, but a parking structure could be one option there, and the city is definitely open to exploring that. It is kind of a more elegant solution because it's outside of the gorge or the National Scenic Area, so you don't have as many limitations.
Right.
And it does capture the Portland area market as they are headed out towards the gorge. But that would still be, years away. We've also had a few conversations with the Port of Portland regarding use of the Troutdale Airport as a park and ride as well, which is currently vacant. But there are, as a FAA site, it's just there are a whole bunch of other regulations to be aware of in terms of using that site as well. But those are ongoing conversations that we are having.
That's great.
Yeah, they are, focused a bit more westward, kind of in the Troutdale area. And also the city of Fairview did receive a grant a couple years ago to study a site that they have there on Halsey, and I think Fairview potentially, or there's a Pacific Power site that could also be potentially developed as well, but that really we haven't seen much movement on that project from their end either.
That's great. Thank you for that summary. That's one. So more information in October. Great.
Yep.
All right. Andrew,
I'd
do
like
you have any other questions, or go ahead, Kathy, is that you?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Eve, I know that Multnomah County is, is really looking, in your transportation process, you are looking at more of the integration with looking at your edges. So looking at how you integrate outside of your borders with transit. And I'm just wondering what you're thinking in your planning process right now with the planning that's going on now in the Gorge with the Gorge Regional Transit Strategy and with the CATS, it's particularly with CATS TMP, how you're seeing, if you're seeing opportunities to coordinate, to put things into your planning process that would allow more coordination.
I don't have a quick, easy answer for you right now, Kathy, probably because it's the first week that we launched our Job Connector shuttle in the area south of PDX Airport. So my focus has been on that right now. I'm hoping to soon have the time to focus on rural transit planning. But that is one of my hopes. So this is why I'm part of this conversation. But I don't have any specifics for you at this time, just because of where we are.
Okay, be mindful of time. Andrew, did you get information that you needed? Is there any final targeted piece of information you need from the advisory committee?
No, I don't believe so. We are on track to basically make a nicer version of this memo, which you will all see, and we'll do some more of that TOD toolkit work as we go into the fall.
Great. And then to your point about having an overlay of the service options onto the maps, I think would be very helpful for that kind of combined picture. The next steps, and I can just tell you, we don't need to start screen sharing, but is your next meeting, we are proposing, originally it was slated for September. And we are proposing to move that a little later to give the team a little more time to early December. So there will be a poll that will be sent out to the TAC. And if you could respond to that within the next week or so, that would be very helpful to get it on people's calendars. And I'm just pulling up the PowerPoint here. And then
Ask a quick question.
Yeah.
The meetings have always been scheduled on Thursdays, on a certain Thursday at 10 a.m. where I have a conflict with the standing TriMet meeting that I need to be at. Is this a set time or is that open? I only was able to attend because that was canceled last minute.
Amy, I think there's some flexibility here with everyone's time. So we'll find out some more information when we do the poll about what times might work well for people. But just in terms of next steps, we are going to be creating a draft. There'll be a draft survey. I think it would be very helpful if we could send it out to the technical advisory committee kind of as a beta test. Kathy, you helped us the last time with that. It was really, your input was really great. We want to keep it short and sweet. The first survey, we got feedback that was pretty long for folks. We are having a community advisory committee meeting next week to review the same information and to get their input. We will be asking again early December. We'll come back to you with a draft TMP. And then there are public hearings in the winter time. So probably 2022-23 might be moved into January with the goal that the plan adoption will happen in spring of 2023. I just rushed through that. Amy, do you have anything else to add to that?
That's it. Thank you very much for everybody's time. I know it's a good chunk out of your day and we really, really appreciate it.
And then we will follow up with not only the poll, but also with the compiled maps. So you can look at those, and if other issues, comments, questions come up, that would be very helpful. It'll also inform how to frame questions for the next community input. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Enjoy your Thursday. Andrew, can you hang out?
It's not
for a
Friday.
quick second? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I've got just a couple of minutes here.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. All right. Is it just the team here?
Just the team.
All right. So I got the sense it was too much to kind of absorb. And then having it separated from the land use might have been too much to absorb as well. I thought your land use presentation, Andrew, was great.
But
The-
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think this was and the folks on the call were the ones who told us about the points that we were sort of talking about. So I guess
Yeah.
it was kind of just a check back in, like, hey, are we missing anything? But I do think that having a good set of those maps with the routes and then the land use companion piece with the routes on them, and you know, that would basically make a good executive summary for this land use analysis kind of task of our stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to take the lead on that and put together a nice little packet for folks.
Yeah, it works well in person when I have all the paper here and you can see it, but when everybody has to look at it slide by slide,
Yeah.
it gets super confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think the feedback, we didn't get a lot of feedback on which option primarily, again, especially east-west, those two. I think those are going to
Yeah.
probably generate the most feedback. I was surprised that we didn't get much input on just removing the routes, the local routes. I thought, especially for Cascade Locks, that might generate, whoa, no, that's not, you know, versus the second option, which is basically a mobility transit hub. So I think that might be something to highlight when we send them back out is, you know, give us your kind of barometer reading about which option you think would work best or from your perspective. So there's still a lot of footwork to do. And then in my case, how changing, adapting this so it's human speak for people to be able to give input who responded to the survey and other folks. So
I think merging those slides, making the slides a little easier to read, I think you'll get better feedback.
Yeah.
Because it's
I
bouncing
agree.
back around, it's like, wait a second.
It's super confusing.
Yeah.
and then Andrew, I had a quick question for you. As we're drafting the survey, are there any particular questions that would help you or inform your work?
I'll have to think about that a little bit.
Okay.
Can you tell me when the survey is going to go out and all of that?
We're looking at probably mid-August is what we've been talking about, Amy.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah, I think I think our work is a little bit more technical, but I'll try to see if there's some like questions that'd be good for the general public. And it can be, I mean, it's the kind of questions you would ask, you know, where do you see future opportunities that really need transit service? So it'd be a fairly basic set of questions.
I think the parking issue might be very interesting about potential parking rides. And I think Kathy was asking specifically about Cascade Locks, not so much about Lot 1. And it's good that ODOT's doing a little footwork on parking rides, but there's so many regulations I know you have to deal with. But I do think if you're talking mobility hub, you're probably talking a parking ride too, or something nearby.
I think maybe, Chris, it might be an opportunity to discuss the difference between, and maybe get the community's feedback between in-lane bus stops and pull-out bus stops. That might also help us give, you know, information or, well, get data of saying, yes, this is something that, you know, they want, so that we can have these stops to be much more accessible to folks. and might help us with our different partners and then creating solutions.
Yeah, and then maybe a little follow-up on the in-lane issue. So Ty, you said that you've tackled this before?
I mean, we have tackled bus stops with the city in general, and their stance has been not in the lane of traffic, pretty much, period.
That's the city of Hood River.
That's the city of Hood River, yes. Basically, I said, well, TriMet does this, and we don't want to be Portland, and like, okay.
Yeah,
There's potential of the county or Cascade Locks if we.
Yeah. And the city management has all changed recently, so that could be something that we reapproach with them.
Yeah, or just showing some of the data about safety and efficiency and
Yeah, I think a memo framing that issue or something would be pretty helpful, and you could shop that around to everybody.
Great. Any other thoughts or comments? We were missing quite a few people. We were missing city. Who were we missing? City of Hood River?
Dustin, City of Hood River. And then we also, sorry, I'm trying to think the other,
Was Will or Rich supposed to be on that?
no, I think it was just Dustin. And there's one other person who said they couldn't join and I'm forgetting who it was.
Hood River County as well.
Yeah,
Wasn't on the-
And he just sent me an email that said like, you know, he just can't be part of the TAC at all. And my understanding is before I left, he was willing to just like read documents and give us overview. So I'm going to follow back up on and see if that maybe
Did Stan and the Forest Service actually jump on?
Yeah.
Okay.
He
I
did.
saw the email saying they were gonna be late.
Yeah, he was able to, and so was Eve. She was late too.
Okay, well, we got some feedback. I was hoping for a little bit more, but I think you'll get feedback after the maps and we send it out. So I know it's the county doing the maps, but if we can look at that, like maybe within the next 10 days of getting them something, is that viable?
Yeah, I think we can.
I'm sending the email.
Oh,
that you said.
voila.
Yeah, it's gone right now.
Okay, yeah, so I
Alright.
think we'll work on that. And hopefully within the next week. Jake is a superstar over at the county.
Okay.
And so.
Oh, right. That's Jake making those maps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can help. It's pretty fast for me to put those together, so I can help out.
Great. That's fantastic. All right. Well, any final comments?
Rob needs help apparently.
Okay, all right, Ty is off. I think we are good. Thank you so much for your help, Chris and Andrew. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, I think if we could maybe touch base, we can do it maybe tomorrow, maybe later today, or maybe if you have 5 minutes right now, we could touch base. Just
Yeah.
about the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye, Andrew.
Hi. Ooh, hi. So
Hi.
is it,
Oh,
are
we stop recording?
I actually.
Hold on.
Okay.